I say good morning to all of our brothers and sisters in the social media world. Our Israelite brothers and sisters that are near, and our Israelite brothers and sisters that are far off. Once again, we always going to stress that those brothers that we classify as Israelite brothers that are near, or those that simply have come to identify with the fact that the descendant of the slave does have a name, and that his name is attached to the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the Bible that were sent into worldwide slavery. Those are the brothers and sisters that are near. The brothers and sisters that are far off, or the brothers and sisters that reside in religious constructs of Christianity and Islam, that have not come to understand that information that they do have a name, and it's not Christian or Muslim, but they do have a name, and it was the name that was removed from our forefathers as they came into slavery and had those things changed. I'd like to say good morning. Good morning. Shalom, King Jonathan. Shalom, Lloyd. Shalom. For our brothers and sisters, the shalom part, it just simply means it's no different, because when you start dealing with those ancient languages, like our brothers in Islam say, Assalamu alaikum. So it's the same thing. It's just a simple greeting. So we wanted to make that clear to our brothers and sisters that may not understand. Sometimes we just start using these Hebrew words and then don't come behind them with what they actually mean. So basically, to our brothers of that have come to understand those different truths as it relates to bloodline and heritage, we say shalom to you, because we know that one day the Most High's promise is that he's going to restore back to his people their pure language that was taken away from them in slavery. And oftentimes we become so zealous about that we run ahead of the Most High and start trying to learn these things anyway. So, but to our brothers and sisters that reside in the religious constructs, we like to say good morning or good afternoon to some. There are some things that we're going to be going into in the days to come. They're definitely not going to be for everybody. They're going to be for those people that possess the spirit of light, that can comprehend. So we know that everybody ain't on the same level of comprehension. But before we get there, we want to deal with some of our brothers with some simplistic things as it relates to their growth. Because if we're going to be able to understand how, are we going to be able to understand the mysteries of the Most High when we can't understand the simplistic principles of living in the world that we're living in now? So in the last set of videos, we was dealing with the prodigal son and his father. And on today, we're going to put another video on top of that. But the spotlight is not going to be on the prodigal son. We have all identified with the fact that at some point or another, we have all been prodigals. To be a prodigal means that it simply means that we are outside of the will of the Most High because of our lack of understanding or our lack of education where the Bible is concerned. Or it simply means that you're a child. We ain't came to full maturity. And because of that, we're classified as prodigals. And as we see that the day came that this son came to himself and then got up and rose, and he was translated from being a prodigal son. And that's what I want to talk to some of the brothers and sisters about right now, is that there's a process that we all have to go through when it comes to growing up and then going into places of maturity. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about. Our foundational scripture is still going to be coming out of Luke, the 15th chapter. And as we said before, we are going to be dealing with the Father now over that of the Son. So we'll start this off by reading a particular passage out of one of the letters of the so-called apostle. Now, when we say so-called apostle, we just identifying with the fact that Paul's letters don't have no authority when it comes to superseding the things that prophets have spoke, the things that the Messiah have spoke. And we have to be able to use wisdom to be able to discern the difference, because everything contained in the letters don't have cohesiveness when it comes to the law and the prophets, and when it comes to the words of the Messiah. However, there are many good things that are contained in the writings of the so-called apostle that we will use oftentimes, okay? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off by using this particular passage in 1 Corinthians 13 chapter, verse 11. It says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, and I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And that's what we were dealing with when we were dealing with the prodigal son. Because the prodigal son, being a child, let's read one more. Let's put one more on top of that. Let's put one more on top of that. I wish that somebody would put these scriptures up on the board, up on the screen, so that brothers and sisters can write them down when they get a chance to view the videos. That was 1 Corinthians 13th chapter and the 11th verse. And now we want to go into the book of Galatians just to establish this particular point before we start dealing with the Father. Let's go to Galatians chapter 4. Galatians chapter 4, beginning at verse 1, reads, and now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, he is no different from a servant, even though he is Lord over all. But he is under tutors and governors until the appointed time of the Father. For we all ourselves were likewise as children, up under the bondage of the elements of this world that we are living in. So, everybody that's born, everybody that has life on this planet comes here the same way. We are born as children under the elements of bondage of the prince of the power of the air of this world, simply because a child is without understanding. It said, but that child is brought up under tutors and governors until the appointed time of the Father. The appointed time of the Father is when the child makes a transition from childhood to adulthood. So he says that when I was a child, up under the bondage of these elements, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. Transition. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Manhood and coming into a place of maturity is the appointed time of the Father, so that whatever his will is for our life, it can be released to us. The same way that the father of the prodigal son was able to release his goods to his son once he got to the appointed time, to where he made the transition from being a child into manhood or places of maturity. So basically what he would now do is he would now make the transition from being a prodigal son into the Father with his arms stretched out. And that's what I want to talk to my brothers and sisters about, is because we can identify the brothers and sisters that have reached a place of maturity based on the things that they are doing. You see, you can't reach the place of maturity and a place of manhood and still be conducting yourself as children. Howbeit, there are many of us that have put ourselves in a frame of mind to where we think we have reached manhood. Never mind the fact that the book says that wisdom cannot be measured by the number of years that one have lived. But wisdom is going to be measured by those things that we can comprehend where the will of the Most High is concerned. So you have people that are grown that'll haul off and tell you, hey, I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man. Well, they may be grown men by the number of years that they have lived, but they may be children in their understanding and in their thinking. Another example that we like to use is portraits of strength that determine whether you're a child or whether you have grown to maturity. For the Bible says that bodily exercise profited little, but godliness profited much. Now, when we look in the arena that's dealing with bodily exercise, it's a multi-billion-dollar business because people exhaust many hours and much time into bodily exercise. And bodily exercise produces muscles and stature and stamina and buff and all of that. You see? But that bodily exercise, just because you are built up in your flesh, don't make you mature in your spirit. So as we said, you can be buffed on the outside and have muscles jumping out of everywhere. You can be rippled. You can have a six-pack. You can have dynamic abs and all of that because that's what bodily exercise does to you. But it brings you into a place of immaturity because it does not profit. Godliness is what profits you. So you got some brothers out here that's buffed on the outside, but they're weak as any timid, feminized man in their spirit because their spirit have not been exercised in the same manner. And if that spirit don't come to the place of maturity, all of your bodily exercise is profiting you nothing. These scenarios have everything to do with growing up and understanding what our purpose is when we do grow up. And this is for women and men alike. We may be using the story of the prodigal son, you see, but everything that's dealing with men is also dealing with women as well because they have a responsibility too. So let's look at a foundational scripture that's coming out of Luke, the 15th chapter. Now, this might be a hard message to digest for some people, even in its most simplistic form, because it's a challenging message. It's a very challenging one, you see, because you're always going to be called to give up yourself and to deny the thing that you desire to do. That's what makes it challenging. So we'll read the story, and then we'll go from there. Let's go. That's going to start at 15 and 11. It says, there is a certain man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said unto his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth unto me. And he divided them unto his living. And not many days after that, the younger son gathered all that he had together, and he took his journey into a far country, and there he wasted his substance with riotous living. You're always going to know when you're a child because riotous living is attached to being a child because you don't understand how to use what it is that you got. So when you start dealing with riotousness, you start dealing with chaos. Because out of a riotous situation comes a chaotic situation. Whether it's that you're drunk and falling down, whether it's that you're loud and belligerent, whether it's that you're using the Bible on social media and only thing that you're doing is wreaking havoc and creating argument, whether you're kindling fires, whether you're putting things out there to provoke men's thought. But the thought that you're provoking is really meaningless and is for the sake of some type of argument. Whether you're the leader of a congregation and you're trying to correct everybody in the world, not having a comprehension that all men are not going to be found in the Most High's favor, that there are a vast majority of people on the planet that will fall victim to deception in this modern day that we are living in, all of these things are dealing with riotousness and riotous living, because riotous living is dealing with a particular type of fighting. And this is what children do. Children fight. Rather than them waking up every day, understanding their purpose and shooting for the target of the Most High's will, we look to the things that we think, just like this son did. And he wasted everything that the Most High had, everything that the Father had given him in riotous living. He was using everything that was given to him in the wrong way. And these are some of the ways that we identify how we know when people are childlike in their understanding and in their spirit. They live life in a riotous fashion. And you don't have to go far, because I said it before that it was a time that through the social media outlook on my page, I had a lot of more learned brothers that more was comprehensible. But now in this day, it's like my whole thing that shifted. So I have a lot of more of the younger brothers and sisters that are doing these particular things that are attached to a riotousness, simply because they're children. They don't know how to understand what they don't understand how to use what it is that they be given. And so the little that they have been given, they'll begin to waste it with riotous, instead of wasting what the Father is bringing to your understanding, trying to provoke somebody else's thought to think about something that is really meaningless. That substance is being wasted because it's designed for us to go into our life and us to ponder it and us to think about it as individuals and us to start living by it. But children don't have full comprehension of why the Father brings certain things into their life, so they don't use them in the right manner. And so you can waste your substance like that. You can waste your substance by not understanding the scriptures. In Matthew 24th chapter, when the Messiah declared that in the last days false prophets was going to rise and they was going to deceive many people. And you can waste the substance that the Most High have given you by not understanding that you can't curve nobody from being deceived, because it's the Father's will that many would be deceived. So you find some of us living a riotous life and wasting our substance, trying to stop something that the Most High or the Messiah prophesied was going to happen. If he prophesied that many people was going to be deceived because it was going to be many false leaders in the world, then that means that every time you jump out there and you try to head people off from that, you become a partaker of riotous living, because now you're fighting against the will of the Most High and you don't comprehend that. So that was one of the things that we were dealing with. And then he spent all he had in the land. He began to be in want. And then he joined himself to a citizen of that country. And then he sent them into the fields to feed the swine. He would have fain had filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave him nothing. And when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? Now that was a key, because when we start growing up into maturity, that has everything to do with us coming to ourselves, coming to our senses. Because we have another set of senses that's outside the flesh that have to be exercised. That's according to Hebrews 5th chapter and 6th chapter. For everyone that's on milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness. That's the child. He don't know how to handle what it is that he's been given, because he ain't been trained. He ain't been up under the tutors and the governors of the spirit of the word to know how to deal with what it is that he has been given. So he is unskillful, because he is a babe. It said, but strong meat belong to them who by reason of use have their senses exercised to be able to discern both good and evil. So when you start talking about coming to yourself, you're talking about coming to your senses. You're talking about having those now fleshly senses now are starting to be overwritten by a set of spiritual senses that propel you past the physicality. When he came to his senses, now his spiritual senses are now starting to be exercised and to be at work. And that is the that's the translation from being from transitioning to a child into places of maturity. It's coming to yourself, coming to your senses, and start understanding what the Father's will is for your life. When he came to himself, he started looking at the Father, and he said, how many of my Father's servants have bread enough to spare, and I'm his child, and I perish with hunger? Well, we read the precept in Galatians 4 that the heir, as long as he was a child, was no different from the servant, even though he was Lord over all. When he started exercising those spiritual senses, he started understanding what the Father's purpose for his life was. So he said, how many of my Father's hired servants? Now I'm no longer a servant. I see myself as who I am. I see myself as the Father's child, and I am different from a servant. Well, when he was a prodigal son, he didn't have no understanding or no comprehension of these things. But now that he is exercising his senses in the spirit, he is starting to look at some things a little bit different. And this is how you always know when we are making a transition from childhood into maturity. He said, how many of my Father's servants got bread enough to spare, and then I, his son, perish with hunger? Now he is starting to understand his inheritance and his heirship and what it is that he possesses. But he, because he's a child, have made a lot of mistakes and now have put himself in a place to where he's detached from all of those things that are rightfully his through being an heir of his father. So he said, I will get up and I will return to my father. And I will ask my Father to have mercy on me. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Only have mercy on me and forgive me. Let's see what it said, what the Father did. And when he came to himself, he said, how many of my Father's hired servants have bread enough to spare? And I perish with hunger. I will arise and go to my Father, and I will say unto him, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. See, many of our brothers and sisters don't understand that we have sinned against the Most High when we don't use what he has given us correctly. There are many things that the Most High give us simply because we ask him. We ask him for it, and he gives it to us even though he knows that we are not ready. But in the process of him giving them. Now let me give you some examples of what I mean when I say the Father can begin to give you things that have to do with your inheritance, and then you can sin against him. The first thing is that the Most High is not going to give you any parts of your inheritance that is designed to go out there and now become a stumbling block to any of your brothers who are fellow and joint heirs of the same inheritance with you. This is how you can sin against the Most High. You can sin against the Most High when he gives you the good thing, and then you take the good thing, and then you're harsh with your brother, or you deal treacherously with your brother, or you become judgmental or condemnatory where your brother is concerned. You see, he said, I have taken what the Father had given me, and I have become judgmental and condemnatory with those things, and murderous and slanderous with my brothers and with my sisters. So that's why I always stay on brothers and sisters about growing up. Growing up, if you're drawing wedges between the people that the Most High gave you to live your life with, you know what I mean? Then guess what? You sinning against the Most High, because the Most High's inheritance was meant to be a beacon of light to all of the brothers and sisters, that they might be able to come to their senses and come to their place of maturity. So as we start looking at the transition, we are now making a transition from being prodigals into the Father with his arms stretched out, because that's the end of the journey. Now that transition have to take place. And if you somebody out here, we're going to look at the condition of the Father, and we're going to measure the condition of ourselves by what is displayed by the Father. And if what we are doing doesn't line up with what the father of this prodigal son had displayed, then you'll know that we're still children, and we need to come to our senses, and we need to start asking the Father to help us to grow to full maturity. Let's see. He said, I will rise. He said in When he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Only make me as one of thy hired servants. And he rose and came to his father. But when he was yet afar off, his father saw him and had compassion on him, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto the father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight. I am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said unto his servant, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. For this is my son, was dead, and now lives again. He was lost, and now he is found. And they begin to be merry. The father, when that son came to his senses, we represent the son who was once prodigal in the hog pen of life. We represent the son who the Most High showed his favor to in the worst times of our life. We represent the son as we got on our knees and began to pray and cry out to the Most High to bless our lives. We represent the son as the Most High seen us before we ever enter into prayer. And soon as we got those words out of our mouth, we seen the Most High show up in our life with forgiveness, grace, compassion, and mercy. This is who we represented as the prodigal. But now we are being translated from the prodigal into the father, so that we understand how we are to deal with our brothers and our sisters. So when the prodigal son, who is now our brothers and our sisters, that are in the absence of the knowledge that we have, the prodigals who are our brothers and sisters that remain in the religious construct of Christianity, that know not that they are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those prodigals that don't understand that they are heirs of the kingdom and they are lord over everything, but they cannot use it or cannot be entitled to their lordship because they are children in their understanding. To our prodigal brothers that still have not learned that Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter and all of these things are pagan, to our prodigal brothers that are still fornicating without the understanding of the damage that it causes to a man's soul, to our prodigal brothers who have multiple wives but don't have the right spirit, to our prodigal brothers that are cheating on their spouses or committing adultery, to our prodigal brothers that still may be tampering with drugs here or drugs there, alcohol here, alcohol there, to our prodigal brothers and sisters that have not learned how to override their flesh when it comes to having disagreements with people, the prodigals that have not learned how important it is to have love and forgiveness, to those that are prodigals. We now have the responsibility to become the father with his arms stretched out, because one day these things and these hog pens will lead them to the grace of the Most High Heavenly Father. It is the spirit that brings a man to his senses. It is the spirit that causes the man to understand there is something greater operating in me than other than my flesh. When the spirit brings our brothers and sisters to their selves and they come to their senses, no matter how much damage they have done to the Father, who the people that represent the Father are those that have come into places of maturity, that they understand if the Most High had not raised me up, I would still be in a hog pen of life. But I'm here now, standing here. And what is my purpose? My purpose is to be translated from being a child and come into being places of maturity and no longer be the prodigal son. But now I go from being a prodigal son to the Father with his arms stretched out. So when we look at our brothers that are children, this is what we have the challenge to become. But the Father said, let's see, now let me go back. And he came and he rose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion on him. When you come to a place of maturity, you understand that with men, some things are impossible, but with the Most High, nothing is impossible. When you really come to a place of maturity and you have the heart of a father, you don't give up on people because you know what the Father's able to do. As a matter of fact, you literally expect the Father to raise those prodigals up in their own time. And so when that son did come to his senses and get up, it said his father seen him from afar off. You see, this was somebody that had love for a son. Somebody that should have love for the brethren in so much to where you constantly in prayer for them and you constantly believe in the Most High. Those people that's making a mess, those children that's making a mess, those children that's arguing, and I don't care how many people you got following you. You can be a child. When you see corruptness and riotousness, that is a telltale sign that the people that are out front are not in the place that they're supposed to be. But we don't wage war with them with the same riotousness. We stand afar off and we pray for our brothers and sisters, knowing that one day the Most High is going to hear our cry and raise them up. And when he do raise that person up that slandered your name, you can be standing there like the Father with your arms stretched out. He is full of compassion. He is full of love. He is full of hope and mercy and grace for his son and for the one that he loved. You're talking about being translated. So you can't be translated into the Father with your arms stretched out, but you still have the mindset or the attitude of a little child that want to throw temper tantrums, that want to go into pouting, that want to hold on to things that somebody did about you, said about you, or something of that nature. It said his father had compassion on him. He seen him from a great distance off. That means that he had something in the spirit that was able to propel him past the place where his son was and start believing the Most High for where his son would be. And when the Most High start operating according to those prayers that we are praying for our brothers and sisters, and we start believing him that the one that's doing wickedness now, that the one that's celebrating now, that the one that's in trouble now, we start believing the Most High that he will bring them out. He'll bring our family out. When they rise up and come out, we thanking the Most High. They don't see us, but we ain't never took our eyes off of them. We seeing them from the far. As soon as he rose up, the Father said he seen him from the great distance. Do you think the Father seen him from a great distance in the physical? When the Bible say he took his journey into a far country? No, when the Most High makes a transition in a person's life that you've been praying for, you'll feel that thing in your spirit. It's the spirit that will connect. He said, I done it. I answered that prayer. And even right now, as you rejoicing, he's getting up and he's making his way back. You see, the Father was seeing things in the spirit that couldn't be seen with the physical eye. From the moment his son came to his senses, the Father seen that thing in the spirit. And he ran out there and began to wait. I know he's coming back home. I feel it in my spirit. I know he's going to get himself together. I know she's going to get herself together. I feel it in my spirit. And this is what happened. This is what the book is saying. He said that when the son came, he was able to confess. You see? But we ain't looking for no confession. And we ain't looking for no confession when our brothers come back. The Father's like, look, it don't matter what you done. I don't care what you done. You home now. That's how we supposed to feel. Nah, man, you owe me an apology. I don't like the way, you did that. You did. And see, many of us, we say we mature. But instead of allowing people, you being the Father with his arms stretched out and let everything be blotted out, you'll still remind people of what they did to you 2 years ago. You'll still go and talk about the disagreement that you had with somebody. You'll see, you ain't ready to be the Father with his arms stretched out. And unless you're ready to be the Father with his arms stretched out, you're not prepared to do ministry work in the way that the Most High declared it. If you're a person out here that nobody can say anything to without you getting mad or without you having a disagreement, you're not prepared to be the Father with his arms stretched out. Because the Father with his arms stretched out, he'll allow everything to be blotted out that son did. And he said he fell on his son and kissed his neck and then told all of the servants, bring me the ring. I know what he's saying. He feels so bad in his spirit that he don't even want to be classified as my son. See, you'll know when you have been a prodigal that's being translated because you don't even no longer even care about the inheritance that's rightfully yours. All you want to do is be back in the place. Just put me back in the same vicinity. I ain't even got to have a house no more. I ain't even got to have a nice car no more. Father, just get me out of this mess that I'm in. I'll settle with being in a homeless shelter or a studio apartment. Just get me out of this mess. That's where the son was. But you see, when we get a heart like that, the Most High, he's so gracious. He said, that's the only place I wanted you to be. When you get yourself out the way and you don't have nothing, you don't want anything, all you want to do is be around me. He said, bring me a ring. The ring represented sonship and royalty. Bring me a robe. Put some shoes on his feet. The Most High said when we get to the place to where we understand that his will and his purpose for us is far greater than anything that we can desire in this world, and we are like the parable of the landowner that was the man that was walking past the field and found a pearl of great price on it. He said, but he couldn't get the pearl because the field didn't belong to him. And for him to take the pearl would have made him a thief. So he left the field, went in his life, gathered up everything that he had, sold it, and then came back and bought the field. Well, this is the condition of this particular son here. And this is the condition of many of us that have been dragged out of some of these crazy places. We like, I don't even care no more. I will throw my whole life away. Just let me hang around you. Just let me be around you. As long as you get me far from the place that I was stuck and couldn't get out of, I ain't got to be sitting on no throne. I ain't got to be having all the good life. Just let me be as one of your hired servants. You see, that's growth. That's maturity. Because now we're no longer looking at ourselves as it relates to the things that we want to do in this world, which make us prodigals. Now we start looking at ourselves from the standpoint of what the Most High wants me to do, what the Most High is requiring for my life. I don't even have a life anymore. I left my life in the hog pen, but this life that I'm taking back, it's going to be totally dedicated to my Father. Whatever my Father want me to do, then that's what I'm going to do. But see, it don't always go like we think it's going to go, because many times we know that we're deserving of punishment that is far greater. But see, the Most High is kind and compassionate and merciful, and that's what I'm talking about with some of my brothers and sisters. We need some brothers and sisters whose kindness and compassion and mercy far excels the understanding or the natural comprehension of the mind in this physicality, because this is what happened. And instead of that prodigal son receiving punishment, he received everything that the father had. Bring him a ring, bring him a robe, bring him this. You know, you're going to do ministry. You got to become the father with his arms stretched out. So that when the people that did you wrong, the people that took your stuff, the people that slandered you, talked about you, did all sorts of things, when they get up, you see them from afar off and you start thanking the Most High. And you don't even let them start confessing all of the things that they did. You just say, forget about it. It's gone. It don't worry. It's my son is back. He who was dead is now living. He who is lost is now found. Bring me everything. And as his son went into the field to work, his work was to watch over the servants. Now you're talking about the child who was an heir in his child status that didn't have no rights. Now you see him become a grown man up under the tutors and governors of life. The tutors and governors don't always represent people that handle the Bible or people that teach it. You got to understand that the tutors and governors that raise you up and bring you to places of maturity are the uncomfortable circumstances in life that the Most High allow us to get ourselves into. So once he come through that, now he is in his rightful place as the heir, overseeing the servants of the Father. And the Father said, Heman did a good job. See, when we get to that point, everybody want to do ministry. Everybody want to be recognized. Everybody want to be known. But baby, let me tell you something. If you're going to be recognized, if you're going to be known for anything, then your life had to be cast off. You have to be willing to trade your life in for the life that the Most High have got for you. You see? That's what we have to do. When we are able to do that, now we are able to possess the same love that the Most High had toward us. We are able to possess it. You know why? Because when we show that we can be there, the Most High will give us all of his attributes, everything that belongs to him. He will commit it to our care. This is how the Father was able to raise up and see his Son from afar off, because he's seen through the eyes of the Spirit. And when the Son got there, he was able to do the same thing that the Most High. See, the Most High had given that Father all of his attributes, because that Father had already released himself and his life to the will of the Father. That's why he had riches. That's why he had cattle. That's why he had servants. That's why he had everything, because he learned early that I seek the will of the Father. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all of these things shall be added. But those main attributes that belong to the Father were given to that prodigal son's father, and now that father became a replica of what the Most High was to us as his Son came, and all he did was got his confession out, and the Most High said, this is my Son. This is my Son. But notice this. Notice this here. Let's get to the good part. Notice this here. Notice this here. If I can find it again. Notice this here. Watch this. Because you're talking about becoming the Father with his arms stretched out. That's who we are. That's who we are supposed to be. That's the grand sum total of where the Most High is bringing us. All of our book reading, all our video watching, all of that stuff is bringing us to a place of maturity which unfolds and becomes the grand sum total of what this Father was. Now watch this. The change of mind from that Son. It says, this is coming out of the Essene Gospel of Peace. We're going into a greater detail now. We're dealing with the Father. Okay? He said, the Son went to his Father's field and he watched every day over the work of his labors. You know why? Because when he came to his senses, he had grown up and understood who he was. He was an heir of everything that his father possessed. But he also understood through the things that he had been through that he must show himself as a responsible son and one that was prepared to handle what the Father had given him. And that's the same way that we are. We must show ourselves. We must show ourselves. Study to show yourself approved as a workman that can go and watch over the servants of the Most High, that can rightfully divide the truth, that need not be ashamed about anything, because the only thing that makes you not ashamed is when you have been through the process of growth and you understand who you are, you understand whose you are, you understand what your purpose is, you understand why the Father have done for you what he have done for you. He never made his laborers work hard, for he remembered his own heavy labor. And the years passed, and his father's possessions increased ever more and more beneath his hand. For the blessings of his father was upon his labor, and the blessings of the Most High will be upon our labor too. When we come to this place that this prodigal son was at, he had a change of mind, and the only thing he wanted to do was seek to please his father. And when we wake up every day with a mindset that the only thing I want to do is please my Father, he said, I'll put my blessing on your labor. That's why some people might have a video that gets 10,000 views and somebody might have a video that gets 60 views. You see, there is a difference, because the difference is going to be is whether or not the Most High's blessing is on your labor. Anything that the Most High put his blessing on is going to be prosperous, and he delights himself in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bring forth fruit in its season. You see, you ain't bringing forth no fruit without the Father's blessing, and you ain't getting the Father's blessing if you still thinking about yourself, because he said the man that's going to get my blessing is the man that wake up thinking about my word, the man that thinks about it all day and think about about it all night. I'm not talking about the man that's so busy and preoccupied with the day that the only time he got to think about my word is for an hour once he get through working for people and once he get through doing all of these other things. He said, I'm talking about the man that is literally consumed with my word, thinking about it to the point to where if he go into the bathroom, he thanking the Most High for letting him be able to walk to it. If he walk out the door, he thanking the Most High for a key that even fit the door, that he can have a door to go in. If he get in a car, he thanking the Most High for a car. Before he pull off and go down the street, he thanking the Most High for blessing him and asking the Most High to protect him and watching while he's on his way. When he pull up where he's going, he thanking the Most High for the parking spot that he giving him, that he didn't have to go too far. He thanking him for the coat that he got to wear, the clothes that he got to wear, the food that he got to eat. He understands that everything that he has been a gift to the Most High. And he said, when you start thinking about my law day and night, and even when he get ready to go to sleep, it's not over, because he go to sleep meditating on the things that transpire throughout the day. He'll go to sleep listening or thinking about a particular scripture that he ain't came to full comprehension on. And for many of us, it don't stop there, because I can't get enough. I'll turn the TV on and find me some Bible to watch and let the audio Bible just resonate in my spirit while I'm sleeping. He said that man will be like a tree planted by the river of water, and you'll bring forth fruit. Well, the fruit that you're going to bring forth is that you'll be translated from a child into the Father with his arms stretched out. Let's see what the Father did. It says, and when his father saw that his son used well his servants and all of his possessions, he said unto him, my son, I see that my possessions are good in your hand. I will give all my cattle, my house, my lands, and my treasures. Let all this be your heritage. Continue increasing, that I may have delight in you. And when the son had received his inheritance from his father, he forgave their debts, and to all his debtors who could not pay him, for he did not forget that his debt also had been forgiven when he could not pay it. And the Most High blessed him with a long life, with many children, and with much riches, because he was kind to all. Notice this. He was kind to all his servants. See, it started by saying he was put over his father's servants, but it ended by saying he was kind to his servants, because the father gave everything that he had into his hands. And what he became was no longer was he the prodigal son. Now he became the father with his arms stretched out, because to his servants were in the same position that he was in as the father's son. And so it says he did exactly to those servants that the father did to him. But what made the prodigal son so great is because the prodigal son had many servants that were committed to his care. He was just one son who his father forgave him, but he had mercy and compassion, and he forgave all the debts of those that belong to him. That means that when the Messiah said, greater works than these shall you do, that's what he means. Greater works than these shall we do. My father did it once with me, but I just did it 100 times with all of my servants, forgiving every last one of them of their debts, all because I never forgot the debt that the Most High forgave me for. So when you start talking about being translated, this is where we are being translated to. We are being translated from the prodigal to the father with his arms stretched out. There are people that will remain children throughout the course of their whole lives. But you don't show me no child. I don't care how bad they are. I don't care how wicked they are. The child could be a murderer. The child could be a thief. The child could be a robber. And that loving parent will stand there and say, I know that they done it, but that's still my child. When we get the heart for the Most High, that's how we feel about our brothers and our sisters. I know they done it. I know where they at, but they're still my brother. They're still my brother. I still don't want them to see them destroyed. I'm still going to pray for them. I'm still going to hope for them. I'm still going to be reaching for them. And if they ever get up and come back, they ain't going to have to tell me nothing. They ain't got to pay me back nothing that they owed me because I gave them my money and they didn't do right. They ain't got to bring nothing back. They ain't got to come back apologizing for slandering my name. All they got to do is get up and come to themselves and say, Father, I have sinned against you. And that is what the Most High is challenging us to as his people. That when our brothers and sisters get up and get ready to make the transition, that we become that father that had his arms stretched out. That our brothers can be comforted. That they can be picked up and raised up from their drunken stupor. Because this son felt real bad. He felt so bad that he didn't even want to lift his head up. He didn't even want to walk in his father's house. He said, I can sleep in the barn. I can sleep out here with the animals. I just want to be in the same atmosphere that you were in. When our brothers come back from being a mess and being raggedy, you know how it was when the Most High raised you up. You didn't feel worthy. You didn't feel worthy. All the people around you knew the condition that you was in. All the people around you had already lost respect, had already talked about you. When you started coming to your senses, they still didn't believe that you was coming to your senses. And there'll be many people in this day that don't. However, the Father was the place that the Son had his eyes set in. He wouldn't care about who seen him, who didn't believe him, who knew what he went through, who was going to hold his past to him. He didn't care about none of that. He said, I'm going to my Father. I'm going to the one that had the power to change things. And when people get ready to get up and make their way back to the Father, and the Father calls them to have to come through you, they supposed to receive the same love from you that that son received from that Father. They supposed to receive the same love from you that those servants received from the Son when he changed. Because don't tell me that the Most High gonna change and re-alter your life and re-alter your thinking, then you supposed to become to those servants, which are those children out there that are trying to serve the Most High but just don't understand because they're children. You supposed to be the same thing to them that the prodigal son, when he was translated, was to the servants, that he had mercy and compassion on them and had forgiven them for everything that they had ever done. And because of that, the Most High increased them greatly, because now he was operating in the attributes of the Father through self-sacrifice. He said, through love and kindness have I drawn men unto thee. Forgive men of their trespasses, and I'll forgive you of your trespasses. He was operating in attributes and principles that he did not understand as a child. And there is no way that you can be in service of the Most High or doing ministry work for the Most High when you don't have the mind of the Father and you don't have outstretched arms. You see, the outstretched arms just symbolizes that I'm selfless. I'm selfless. It's all about the will of the Most High. Whatever the will of the Most High is, that's fine. I don't expect everybody to come back. There are many that are dying in a hog's pen. I don't expect that. I don't run after people. You don't see the Father running after people. You don't see the Father running after the people that was living riotous. You don't see the Father people running after the people that was out there drinking, that was out there on drugs, that was out there fornicating. You don't see the Father running after people that was out there celebrating Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, Easter. You don't see the Father doing that. What you do see the Father doing is you see the Father hoping from the distance. He wasn't going everywhere. So when you going and you running to people's pages, trying to tell them something, trying to provoke them to some type of thought, you ain't doing nothing but getting in the Most High's way and showing yourself to be a child. You're not ready to be the Father with the arms stretched out. Because if you're going to be the Father with the arms stretched out, the only thing you got to do is stand there and keep hoping for your brothers. Keep praying for your brothers. Keep praying for your wife. Keep praying for your children. Even if they ain't lined up with what you want them to do, you got to stand there and keep praying for them. Keep hoping for them. Hoping for the day that one day they will get up and make their way back to you. And when they do make their way back to you, the only job that you got to do is display the same love and kindness toward them that the Most High have had towards you. And we're doing this video because that is not what we see taking place. You see? It's not what we see taking place. So we operating in this day like we've been operating. A child left to himself shall be an embarrassment to his mother and shall be heaviness to his father. And we'll still leaving children to themselves the same way our men go out here and get women pregnant and run off and leave the child to themselves to fend for themselves while the mama is off doing something else to fend for themselves. We're doing the same thing right now in a spiritual sense, as we don't want to deal with the children who are heirs just like us. So, I'm going to end the video right there. All praises to the Most High Heavenly Father and His glorious Son.